Hello and welcome back to First History Channel, the place where the forgotten pieces of our history are recalled. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you enjoyed our video and want to watch more interesting history lessons. Today, we are continuing to dive into the Second World War, and we are presenting another key battle of the Eastern Front, the battle that is known as the Battle of Kursk. Introduction. The city of Kursk, located in present-day Russia, is a city of about 500,000 inhabitants today. It was a key city in World War II in the summer of 1943. The Battle of Kursk was a massive and decisive clash between the German Wehrmacht and the Soviet Red Army on the Eastern Front during World War II. It was fought from July 5 to August 23, 1943, in the vicinity of the city of Kursk, which is situated 450 kilometers southwest of Moscow. The salient was a bulge in the Soviet lines that stretched 240 kilometers from north to south and protruded 160 kilometers westward into the German lines. The battle was the largest armored engagement in history and one of the greatest battles of World War II, and it ended in a Soviet victory. The battle was the culmination of the German summer offensive in the east, known as Operation Citadel, which aimed to destroy the Soviet salient around Kursk and pave the way for a decisive victory on the Eastern Front. This video will try to explore the background, planning and forces, execution, and aftermath of the Battle of Kursk. Background. We have only to kick in the door and the whole rotten structure will come tumbling down. It is supposed to be the quote said by Hitler on the eve of the invasion of the Soviet Union, when he approved the plans of the invasion of the Soviet Union, Operation Barbarossa. The German invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa, had begun on June 22, 1941. The Wehrmacht advanced rapidly and had reached the outskirts of Moscow by December of that year. However, the Soviet Union was not defeated, and the Red Army launched a counteroffensive in December 1941, which drove the Germans back from Moscow. The war on the Eastern Front settled into a brutal and protracted struggle for territory, with each side launching offensives and counteroffensives in an attempt to gain the upper hand. After the disaster in Stalingrad in the winter of 1943, Field Marshal Erich von Mainstein, better known as the Master of Mobile Warfare, managed to conquer on more time the city of Kharkov in the spring of 1943, after an astonishing defeat of the Red Army, which led to the fact that the Germans regaining their momentum on the Eastern Front. If you are interested in the German defeat of Stalingrad, you can watch the 2 videos dedicated to this subject from this channel. Field Marshal Erich von Mainstein asked for more troops and for permission to attack deeply in Soviet territory, with the aim to encircle the Soviet forces from the Kursk bulge. But the German High Command had some doubts regarding the future advance in the Soviet territories, especially because of the weather conditions, in particular the well-known Russian Rasputitsa, better known as General Mud, which transformed the roads in muddy terrain and was a serious obstacle for the German mobile warfare. The war industry from Germany had already built newer and better tanks for the German war machine in 1942 and 1943, such as the Tiger tank known as Panzer VI, the Panther tank known as Panzer V, and the 65 tons monster tank destroyer called the Elephant or Ferdinand. Therefore, the German military high command wanted to have a significant advantage against the Soviet tank T-34, which at that time was considered a nightmare for the German soldiers. Hitler and the German high command drew up a plan to encircle the Soviets in the vicinity of the city of Kursk, and the plan was called Operation Citadel. But, according to some historical sources, Hitler had said that all the time he was thinking about the plans for the Citadel operation, his stomach gave him the feeling that he would soon have to vomit. So great was the tension related to this military operation that the thought that he might make a mistake caused him to feel nauseous. That's why Hitler postponed Operation Citadel twice, firstly to make sure everything was set up, secondly to be sure that as many of the new tanks as possible reached the battlefield near Kursk, and not least because he was aware that in the event of a defeat, the Eastern Front would be lost forever. The Soviet perspective. The Stavka was well aware of the threat from the vicinity of the city of Kursk, and the Soviet High Command ordered to be built an entire fortress around the salient of Kursk. 3 heavily fortified lines were constructed, with minefields, trenches, and gun emplacements, around 4,200 kilometers of trenches along the Voronezh front, approximately the distance between Madrid and Moscow. The Central Front had dug another approximate 5,000 kilometers of heavily fortified lines. To make the move between the fortified positions much easier, supplied with food and ammunition, more than 2,000 kilometers of roads and 600 bridges were built. The Soviet archives are saying that more than 300,000 wagon loads of supplies were delivered with supplies and equipment for the Kursk salient. The same archives reveal that Stalin and the Stavka, Soviet High Command, were briefed by an agent nicknamed Werther, whose real identity remains unknown to this day, but is believed to have been part of the High Command of the German Armed Forces, on April 12 with all the plans regarding Operation Citadel. The reports were sent to Moscow by Rudolf Resslins, head of the Swiss-based Lucy spy ring. Army forces. The Germans imagined Operation Citadel as a pincer maneuver to encircle the Soviet forces from the salient of Kursk. To do that, the German High Command assigned Army Group Center and Army Group South to carry out the military maneuvers of Operation Citadel. Army Group Center under Field Marshal von Kluge assigned General Walter Model to lead military operations and commanded a force of 330,000 soldiers and 1,000 tanks. In order to counter this army, the Soviets deployed the Soviet Central Front under the command of General Konstantin Rokossovsky, a force composed of more than 700,000 men and 1,800 tanks. On the other side of the pincer maneuver was Army Group South led by Field Marshal Erich von Mainstein with a strength of 450,000 soldiers and 1,500 tanks and armored vehicles. The Red Army opposed this force, an army called the Voronezh Front composed of more than 600,000 men and 1,700 tanks led by General Nikolai Vatutin. In addition to these forces, the Soviets had kept under the command of General Ivan Konyev an entire army called the Steppe Front with a strength of approximately 570,000 soldiers and 1,700 tanks. The air support for the German armies was provided by Air Fleet 6 led by Colonel General von Greim in the north, and Air Fleet 4 led by General Deslock in the south area, with a total strength of more than 2,000 aircraft. The Soviets deployed over 2,500 aircraft to this operation for all 3 army fronts.